I am going to be talking today about how essentially our industry, the marketing and advertising industry, has fundamentally changed over the last 2 decades because of the internet, new digital technologies, and how brands and consumers are now interacting in a different way than they used to, and how it's really about content now. And content either needs to be useful or entertaining, but it always has to be shareable. The environment has changed. Over the last 2 decades, digital media technology has fundamentally changed how brands and consumers interact with each other, and also how brands market to consumers. And it's not going away. Brands can no longer buy an audience like they used to. Media fragmentation and the decreasing reach of media has really impacted brands and their ability to advertise through traditional means. And that's only going to continue to increase. Essentially, marketers are paying more today for less reach than they were 20 years ago. And it's not just media that's being impacted, it's also the number of brands have proliferated substantially over the last 2 decades as well. It's really hard for consumers to really understand what's what with all the different brands out there. So much advertising looks the same that's out there. And for consumers to actually wade through that crowded sea of parity, they've actually had to work on their own to create mechanisms to do that. So consumers are writing reviews. They're on social networks talking about brands and products, and they're creating sites like TooManyBrands.com, which is a way to aggregate brands and say, you know, what's what. And ultimately, what it's coming down to is consumers don't trust brands in most situations, but they trust each other. So it's something very important that, as marketers, we need to understand and embrace. It used to be based around a media plan, and if you were able to reach enough of your consumers, it's still about reach, definitely, but it's reach in a different way. But consumers have the ability to turn on and off the messages that they receive on an ongoing basis. There's just so much out there for them to actually process. So ultimately, your content has to be great, but also needs to be shareable as well. And that's one of the great things of what this day and age that we're in, is that shareability of content was something that wasn't around 15 or 20 years ago. And when we think about connection is extremely important because ultimately people want to connect with each other. And we'll actually go into the reasons. So first and foremost, they want to create social bonds with each other. So when people see content that can bring them closer together or bring them closer to each other, they're more likely to share it. If it relates to them, again, they're more likely to share it. And then defining collective identity. If content can highlight a truth or a feeling about a group, something that means something to that group, again, it's much more highly likely that content is going to be shared. I want to focus on how brands are implementing these ideas to help make content or help make their campaigns ultimately useful or entertaining in some manner. And we'll first start with useful. So to first understand useful, you need to understand, I guess, the shift that has occurred. And I went through the shift that's happening over the last 2 decades with digital and just the internet in general. But these drivers are really changing fundamentally what the kind of content and ultimately advertising that brands are providing to the end consumer. And it's all these new technologies and platforms that are forcing brands to interact with consumers in new ways, and ultimately forcing a level of brand innovation that, quite frankly, we've just never seen before. So with all of these interesting brand campaigns, they've all followed, in this sense, a simple strategy, and that is make the content very easy to share, ultimately make it extremely useful, or make it highly entertaining. And then to be successful today, and especially tomorrow, because things are going to continue to evolve over time, is brands and their agency partners, they have to adapt to this value-based mindset for advertising. And if they don't, they're just not going to be successful. So, thank you.